Has anyone heard of someone eating so much spaghetti? Did they actually go into a spaghetti coma? I gotta be honest, I feel like I'm a bite or two away from a fucking spaghetti coma.
If I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Is spaghetti one of the most overrated or underrated dishes ever? And when you think of spaghetti, do you think this whole show is going to be about spaghetti? Do you think that it means the noodles, or do you think that it means the sauce? In America, spaghetti is one thing. In the rest of the world, it's one other thing entirely. Spaghetti is the noodle, if you didn't know that. Any sauce or meatballs or whatever else you may add to your spaghetti is actually just random additions. So I know when in America, traditionally you think of spaghetti, you think of like meat sauce and all that. But no, it's just the noodles. Now you can add some tomato-based sauce to it in a traditional way. And then you can add extra stuff on top of that and like have a whole whatever. But yeah, spaghetti's just the noodles. The more you know. But yeah, it's like one of those things, like you grow up eating tons and tons of fucking spaghetti. And then one day you're sitting as an adult, you're like, I haven't had spaghetti in a while. That sounds delicious. Spaghetti is one of those things you can go to the poorest house in the ghetto of your town, and they will have eaten spaghetti in the last week, if not every day for the last week. And you can go to the fanciest restaurant in town, in the nicest part of the city, and there will be spaghetti on the menu. High and low, spaghetti covers all of it. Crazy, right? You can gussy up. Have you guys said that in a while? You can gussy up spaghetti so that it's like $40 a plate, depending on what you put on it and what you add to it. Or it can be the cheapest thing, the cheapest foodstuffs in order to feed your family. Kind of weird how that works. Anyway, welcome to 9sense. 9sense is a satanic perspective of our modern world. And I'm your host, Reverend Campbell. It is March 7th. It's March already. You believe that? March. Jeez. I got a great show for you this week. That's right. In The Devil's Advocate, we're going to be doing a little bit of a return to letters from the devil. This one concerns some first phase stuff. In The Infernal Informant, Biden marking Bloody Sunday by signing voter rights order. And Idaho protesters burn masks at state capitol rally. And in the creature feature, I'm going way back to 1990 for an IBM video game I played not far from 1990 called Champions of Krynn. We'll talk about it. It's a little fun. I mean, it's not like modern games, but we'll get into that. So the weather here has been really, really nice. Oh, hold on. Let me say hi. Zachary, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining live. Gary, I'm doing well tonight. How are you doing? Valeria, how you doing? Thanks for joining. William, what's up, man? Joaquin, on the other side of the ocean, how you doing? Dog, you made it! Woohoo! Let's see, Lexi. It's going to be fun tonight, I think. Thanks for joining live. I appreciate you. And for anyone else after the fact, hi. Okay, so it's the weather is so warm right now that we're opening all the windows. We're letting the breeze flow through the house and push out all that funky winter in-house smell. It might just be in my head, but I feel like there's like this weird stagnant winter smell. And here's the rub. We're still in winter. And the weather is thinking that it's already spring. We went on a walk with the dogs today, and people were barbecuing, and the smells were wafting past my nostrils. And I was immediately transported to the fall. Like it just felt not right now. It was crazy how one smell, Your olfactory senses will literally transport you to a different time and place. It's awesome. But yeah, we took our jackets because we thought it was going to be, because it is windy. We thought it was going to be, a little bit warm or something, or I'm sorry, a little bit cool or something. But ended up we had to take them off because it was so goddamn hot, and we were just walking around in t-shirts. See, in Utah, we have gotten snow. It's very rare, but we've actually gotten snow in the mountains in June, like the beginning of June. It's rare, but it happens. So, I mean, it's called the greatest snow on Earth, greatest ski on Earth. I don't even know my state motto anymore. Now I'm second guessing. I don't fucking know. Anyway, it can snow for a long time past. when it's like way past due, it's still snowing. But not today. And this whole weekend, we took advantage. I actually slept for 11 hours yesterday. It was magical. I have never slept for 11 hours before, but I didn't sleep the night before. My body was not letting me. And then I just sort of crashed around 6 and then woke up at 6. I was like, oh, so this is what it's like. This is how the other half lives. It was so nice. It was crazy. You guys ever do that? Like your body is just like, you have to sleep. You may not want to. You may be not used to doing it. But it's happening, so get ready. And it just switches off. That was my yesterday. So today I'm feeling extra, I don't know, exuberant. You tell me at the end of the show if it was exuberant or not. Yeah, so the weather is so nice that we've already ordered extra soil for our gardens. I am in the mindset of waiting for the day when we can start preparing the garden. And in Utah, that's usually around, like our last frost will usually be around Mother's Day. And that's when you can really get your vegetables and stuff in there. You can start them in the house beforehand, but I'm already starting, like, I'm percolating the ideas. Like, what are we going to grow this year? What is the yard going to look like with the garden fully installed? Am I going to have time to do the other things that I traditionally do, even if we're still dealing with COVID and stuff, but I'm going to be working outside a lot more. Winter, I don't work outside. And so, I have extra time. This takes a significant amount of time. I'm thinking about not just getting the yard in order, the garden in order, but also the yard in order. Thinking about, we have those new chickens that I showed you guys in a daily vlog before. How are they going to, intermingle? We're going to have to spend time with them as we ease them into the rest of the chickens' lives. It's going to be, I'm so looking forward to it. I got to get out of this house. I'm going crazy. Just today when we were on the walk and the sun was beaming down on our skin, it was like I was being recharged. I felt like I was a dead battery that's powered via solar energy, and I was just being actively recharged by the sun. I can't wait. And I got to wait a little bit longer, but I got to trim my grapevines because this year I'm going to do wine again. I'm going to make some wine and I'm going to make some beer again. So I'm ready. I'm excited. And that's really all I have to talk about. Every weekend, 4 hours a night for the work week. Oh, wow. Jeez. 4 hours. Phil. All right. How about we do a little devil's advocate? Let's talk a little Satan. I mean, that's what you're here for, right? You come for the Satan, you stay for the jokes. Let's throw up this image and we will get into it. All right. Letters from the Devil. This is the article April 18, 1971. Talking about traveling back in time. So a gentleman named Richard L. is writing into the article, to the column. And he's asking a whole bunch of kind of standard first phase questions. And I want to set the scene before I start diving into this, because the doctor's responses to those of us who have had 50 plus years of education on this subject are pretty pedestrian. But in the time that this was written, it was only a couple years after the Satanic Bible was released, and only a few years longer that the Church of Satan was actually formalized as a religion. So this is brand new to everyone. And in that time, the doctor was doing his rituals. You know, he was doing documentaries where people would come in and film rituals and then release them in their, Satan documentaries. And there was articles in newspapers and articles in magazines, in men's magazines, that were being released showing pictures. So people's first impression of what Satanism was a sort of satanic mass, or like a black mass presentation. It was very anti-Christianity presentation. And he, the doctor, did that intentionally so that he could draw attention to what he was doing. And it worked in spades. And, he ended up not doing it because that's all people thought the organization was all about and the religion was all about. But in the time, that's when this was written. So no one knew anything about what this new religion was. If it's called Satanism, it must be anti-Christian. And so that's the place they're coming at. So some of the responses I found interesting and still relevant to first phasers' questions that I commonly see today, which is why I wanted to talk about this article specifically. Strawberry milk, nice. All right, so the first question was about, do you use incense? What kind of incense do you use in your satanic rituals? And can you substitute incense for other implements, like, for example, the bell? And the obvious answer is that you cannot substitute a pollutionary device for a device that's supposed to remove the pollution in the air, to sort of prime your mind for the ritual to follow. So for those of you who may not know, using the bell, it's supposed to clear the air entirely in the ritual chamber. It signifies the beginning and end of the ritual, and it's meant as just this massive tuning fork to sort of set the stage for what is to follow and to draw your attention in immediately. Incense is just atmosphere. And though some people may use it in their rituals, it is not a requirement. And the kind of incense you use is just entirely depending on what you want out of the ritual itself. Maybe if it's a lust ritual, for example, you're going to use incense of an odor that is familiar to the person that you're trying to draw attention from. If it's a destruction, maybe it's a favorite sense to help sort of assault your senses, a favorite sense of the person you're trying to destroy, and just to infuriate you that much more. They're invading your area, and that just gets you hot and crazy, drawing out those adrenal energies and allowing you to direct them a little bit more. Or maybe it's just a simple scent that you find relaxing. And that gets to the next question that I'm sort of jumping through, not in line here, but time. When is it best to perform a satanic ritual? And the clear, concise answer is whenever the recipient is going to be most open to suggestion. Now, for some people, that may be the middle of the night. But for others, like I was just saying, on the weekend, yesterday, I was out for 12 hours. So that would have been a perfect time to conduct a ritual against me. And that would have started at 6 p.m. in the evening. And maybe it's any time on the weekend. But maybe it's not directed at someone else. Maybe it's a compassion ritual for yourself. When are you going to be able to have time to truly reflect on the result of this ritual? And that's when you're going to want to perform it. Maybe that's in the middle of the night. Maybe that's in the middle of the afternoon. Entirely subjective. And so don't ever think that there's only one specific time that's going to equate success. This is the combination lock principle in effect here. Whatever works for you is what you need to do. And again, depending on the results you're expecting. If it's a lust ritual, maybe a Friday night, and the doctor brings this up in his example. Maybe Friday night is the best time to do it, when the person that you desire is sort of out in that mode partying. And so they are more suggestive because they're already in that headspace. So that's when you conduct the ritual, and then you get out there in the real world and use a little lesser magic to someone that's already primed and prone. So the timing of a ritual is entirely subjective. He also brought up dress. He said he doesn't have a robe, a traditional, like cloak or something like that. But he does have a really nice black suit, black tie, and white shirt. And he could actually grab a cape, from somewhere. And he asked if that would be okay. And a reiteration from the doctor on this point is that, and I'm extrapolating from the answer, and I'll give you the answer in a second, is that you're supposed to be cloaking yourself in darkness. That's the point. It doesn't matter whether you're wearing a black onesie. I don't know. I don't know why I chose a onesie, but you could be wearing a black onesie. And that, as long as that's okay for you in your head, then that's all that matters. It doesn't matter what other people think. If it's a group ritual, it can't detract from the purpose of the ritual. But if all you have is a little cape to throw over your, like a side cape to throw over your white shirt in the middle of the ritual, then yeah, that's great. And the formal presentation of just being in a suit, it changes the way you think, the way your mind works. Straight up difference between a t-shirt and jeans and putting on a suit. You carry yourself a little bit different. Some of it's going to be the tailoring of the suit. It doesn't allow you to sort of slouch and bend like jeans and t-shirt will. But there's something special about it. So maybe just try that one time. Do a little dress up. See what clothing makes you feel more powerful. And sometimes that's going to be, I'll go back to it, a black onesie. And sometimes that's going to be a full suit, or maybe just nothing at all and just a cloak over you. Whatever you feel most potent, most powerful in is what you should be taking into the ritual chamber. Okay, what's the next one? Titles. So is anyone who uses magic considered a witch or a warlock? And I'm sorry, I just saw a comment. I'm going to get back to this. I'm going to put a pin in it. Jason, that reminds me, the vagina-scented candles. Didn't Gwyneth Paltrow, through her Goop company, release a candle scented with her vagina? They're out there, so you can find them. If that's what you need, by all means. All right, what was I talking to? Witch or warlock. This is something that, if you're just a Satanist and you're not a member of the Church of Satan, you may not even think about it. But there's actual organizational titles of witch and warlock. But that's only for organizational hierarchy reference, right? Outside of the organization, anyone who practices satanic magic, if they are so inclined, can consider themselves a witch or warlock. That's a tradition that goes back to pagan roots. But that doesn't mean you have to. And it certainly doesn't mean that it's going to be recognized by the organization unless, of course, you join and are given that title. It's things that are entirely subjective for the reasonings up to the administration when, if they ever want to. And then another one that was brought up was black masses. It was talking about what are the best versions of black masses. Is it using the traditional Roman Catholic Mass and backwards, or what is the best way to perform, and how often should you perform a black mass? And I thought the doctor's answer to this was particularly brilliant, and that says something because he is really something else. He was. He commented that black masses, which blaspheme against worn-out, ridiculous sets of principles, if practiced regularly, would become tiresome and in active, violent opposition to the very positive principles of Satanism. I want to say that again. Focusing on black masses, meaning trying to corrupt an established religion's masses, is in opposition to Satanism. Because rather than focusing on you and your own power, you're focusing on somehow corrupting an established organization that's already ridiculous in the first place. You're putting your energy in the wrong place. You shouldn't be actively opposing something that doesn't even know if you exist. You should be working on yourself to create a presence so people know you exist. And understand the difference there is in the difference between a pseudo and a Satanist, literally. So yes, there is a ceremony in the Satanic, and of course Satanic Mass is covered in the Satanic Bible, and the Satanic Rituals has some ceremonies that are very similar to that. But they're not things that you just do on a regular basis. In the Satanic Mass, rather than being a corrupting, sort of a blasphemous projection of some other organization, it's actually a celebration, as are all Satanic rituals, of Satanic values. So understanding the difference between trying to twist something else and trying to build up and empower yourself. That is why Satanic rituals are not anti-Christian. They are pro-Satanic principles. And I love that he thought that he should take the time to explain that to some rando. Because there's some Satanists, I think, that should understand that. You know? Mr. Victor Wicked. Pooping on a turd. Good to see you, man. It's been a little bit. Sorry, I'm just looking at some comments here. Baby fat candles. Kentucky yucky. Okay, I think that was it. I often go back to Letters from the Devil. Not just because it's this sort of secret collection of satanic wisdom, which it is, but rather than getting it through getting this satanic wit and wisdom through some other Satanist who just wrote an essay about it, this is from the source. This is from the man himself, the doctor, the gentleman who codified this religion. And he's speaking directly to people who don't know shit. So he has to clearly and plainly lay it out in a very concise and open way. And I think because it's so simplified and straightforward, it may be a little off-putting because you read the Satanic Bible and it just builds you up. You're like, oh, Satan! Yeah, you know, you get fucking energized. But listening to someone lay things out in a very matter-of-fact way, well, it's not exactly the 9 satanic statements. But it's very important to understand because it takes that bombastic presentation of the Satanic Bible and it distills it to easily understandable articles. And that is where the truth of Satanism lies, is in the actual understanding of the principles, learning how to use them in your life, rather than just yelling, "Oh, hail Satan!" You know? Even though that does feel really good. Not the point. So, check out Letters from the Devil. You can pick it up. I think you can still pick it up from underworldamusements.com. So, if you don't already have it, it's not very expensive. But it's filled with tons of these articles from his column. Okay, let's do a little Infernal Informant. All right, let me throw up this image, and we are going to dive into it. Yeah, certainly, Ruth, in the context of ritual, yelling's great when it's appropriate. Okay, Biden marking Bloody Sunday by signing voter rights order. This is from APnews.com, Associated Press. A new executive order from President Joe Biden directs federal agencies to take a series of steps to promote voter access, a move that comes as congressional Democrats press for a sweeping voting and elections bill to counter efforts to restrict voting access. For those of you who don't know, you must be not paying any attention to politics, and I don't blame you if you don't. But you should know that each party does everything they can to ensure that their voters appear at the voting booth. But one party does everything they can to make sure the other sides don't. Republicans. And that's what this is all about. And that's why Republicans oppose legislation like this. Because when actual people show up to vote, they lose. Because their ideas are actively against the main amount of people voting. So, got to frame that, because not everyone understands that fact. And you have to understand that in order to understand why this legislation is important and why these politicians are making these, this executive order, for example. His plan was being announced during a recorded address on the 56th commemoration, I am stumbling a lot today, of Bloody Sunday, the 1965 incident in which some 600 civil rights activists were viciously beaten by state troopers as they tried to march for voting rights in Selma, Alabama. Quote, "Every eligible voter should be able to vote and have it counted," Biden says in his prepared remarks to Sunday's Martin and Coretta King's Unity Breakfast. "If you have the best ideas, you have nothing to hide. Let the people vote." Biden's order includes several modest provisions. It directs federal agencies to expand access to voter registration and election information, calls on the heads of federal agencies to come up with plans to give federal employees time off to vote or volunteer as nonpartisan poll workers, and prescribes an overhaul of the government's vote.gov website. Yeah, take a note in there. He's actually saying that the cornerstone of our democracy, being that people should be able to go vote, needs a holiday for federal employees because it doesn't exist right now. Think about that. The cornerstone of our democracy, and there's not even a fucking holiday to let people actually go out away from their jobs to go vote. How insane is that? This is a good first step, but way overdue. Democrats are attempting to solidify support for House Resolution 1, which touches on virtually every aspect of the electoral process. It was approved Wednesday on a near party line vote, 220 to 210. The voting rights bill includes provisions to restrict partisan gerrymandering of congressional districts, strike down hurdles to voting, and bring transparency to a murky campaign finance system that allows wealthy donors to anonymously bankroll political causes. One thing that you need to really take note of when you're thinking about the realities of elections is that money talks with elections. It means you're going to be able to get your message and the opposer's truths in front of more people's eyes. Or you're going to be able to muddy the waters of truth and convince people that there is no truth. If you have money backing you, you can convince people to do nearly anything, even vote against their own self-interest. It's been done since the beginning. It's nothing new. Not one party has power over the other in this particular situation. Both parties use it and abuse it, even with gerrymandering. But if you can restrict that, that actually gives more weight to the civilian, the actual citizen casting their vote, which is, I think, the point of all of this. Okay. Democrats say that the bill will help stifle voter suppression attempts, while Republicans have cast the bill as unwanted federal interference in states' authority to conduct their own elections. Think about that too. When Black Americans were given the right to vote, Southern states immediately started passing new legislation in order to filter their rights. You would have to meet certain quotas, jump through certain hurdles in order to be qualified, even though the federal government said, no, every citizen of an age can vote. They didn't want them to. And there's still hurdles like that being done today, enacted today. Polls being closed, limiting the time that a poll stays open, how many polling locations are even allowed to open in the first place. Tricks like this are being actively used right now. It's meant to stop people from being able to vote, which means minority parties like the Republican Party can actually have more power than they should. And they've been doing it brilliantly from the beginning. So, I mean, you got to take your hats off to them. They're good at what they do. Democrats, okay, so I'm sorry, I'm jumping back here. The bill's fate is far from certain in the closely divided Senate. Conservative groups have undertaken $5 million campaigns to try to persuade moderate Senate Democrats to oppose rule changes needed to pass the measure. When your bill's purpose is to allow accessibility to citizens to vote, and the local states are saying, we don't want that. That is federal overreach. You're being sent to a federal body in order to make legislation for the entire country. A state should not have a say over federal execution. That argument holds no weight at all. And if you want to extrapolate that and say, well, but that means every registered voter can actually vote in the state, and I don't want that, you should probably explain why. You shouldn't just say that's federal overreach. No. Why don't you want people to vote? Why don't you think you would be voted for by the people you're supposed to be representing? All right, so with this executive order, Biden is looking to turn the spotlight on the issue and is using the somber commemoration of Bloody Sunday to make the case that much is at stake. Bloody Sunday proved to be a conscious, shocking turning point in the civil rights movement that led to passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Similarly, Biden was hoping the January 6th sacking of the U.S. Capitol by pro-Donald Trump mob will prove to be a clarion call for Congress to take action to improve voter precaution. Sorry, half of them wanted it. That's just the truth. Until they were in the shit and they were calling Trump saying, you need to get your ass out here and tell these people to stop attacking us. There's going to be problems. And he said, you know what? No, I don't think so. And then right after, when their asses were safe again, they went right back to Trump land. This cult, man. It's crazy. In 2020, with our very democracy on the line, even in the midst of a pandemic, more Americans voted than ever before, Biden says in his prepared remarks. Yet instead of celebrating this powerful demonstration of voting, we saw an unprecedented insurrection on our Capitol and a brutal attack on our democracy on January 6th. A never-before-seen effort to ignore, undermine, and undo the will of the people. Biden's remarks also pay tribute to the late civil rights giants, Reverend C.T. Vivian, Reverend Joseph Lowry, and Representative John Lewis, all playing critical roles in the 1965 organizing efforts in Selma, and all died within the past year. It should be a no-brainer that if you are a legal citizen, you should have the right to vote, and you should have as much access as can be given. It should be so easy because that encourages democracy. It should be online. There are voter state IDs you can use to sign in and be cross-checked against. Instantly. You could just use an app on your phone to vote. Other countries do this successfully right now. Ask yourself, why is it so hard for some people to vote? Why is it so difficult? Why are they trying to continue to restrict it? Why don't they want people to have access? It should be pretty fucking obvious. And if you've never thought about it before, you need to start thinking about it, because your vote, as we've seen in the last two elections, actually have consequences. All right, what are you guys saying up in here? Voting, what do I support? Voting holiday or mail-in ballots for everyone? I think there should be both. Utah has successfully had mail-in ballots for years, and we've never had any issue with it. It's an obvious answer. There should be a holiday. Now, some people are still going to have to work, so that's not going to solve all the problems, which is why you still need the mail-in ballot for people who can't get out because, maybe they're a single parent trying to, work to have enough food to take care of their kids. It's just not realistic for some people to be able to go off on one freaking Tuesday in the middle of the week. Make it a weekend, make it a Sunday. I don't know, just whatever you need to do, make it as easy as possible. Because then it's easier to filter out problems. But when you start restricting things and you start making those secret dealings and you start closing stuff down, well, then you open up the opportunity for corruption and trouble. If we want to care about our democracy, then we should have to minimally prove that you understand both sides of the vote. Yeah, I don't know about everywhere, but Utah usually sends out voting information about candidates and their positions, and it's on PBS, the television station, free. They have debates on television, free. So there's no excuse for any citizen not to know where their representatives stand. There are open, free debates available. There are websites explaining it available. I don't know how you can make it easier other than like Clockwork Orange holding people's eyes open and then having it run in front of their face. Like, it's pretty easy out there. I've even gotten to the point where I am sitting with my mail-in ballot at my kitchen table on my phone looking up the representatives to make sure that I'm making the right choice. It takes a couple extra minutes, but at least I know that I'm doing what is in my best interest rather than just saying, oh, I'm just going to go down a party line. Or, Utah is really kind of crazy because it's not just A and B party. There's a lot of different parties and representatives, on the ballot. So you have to do a little homework. But that's the point. There you go, Mr. Victor Wicked. There you can just turn up the volume on it. So when I scream, people are like, oh my gosh, what is that white man talking about? Republicans just made it illegal to supply food or water to people in voting lines. You see what I'm saying? That is not enough to change someone's vote. To say this water for your parched lips for after having stood in line for 8 hours is a courtesy of X or Y representative. Vote them. No, you're just going to say, hey, thanks for the water, and then vote whatever you're going to vote for in the first place. If you went to the line, you know the choice you're about to make. Like, that's not going to sway you. So I don't know what other argument there would be to prevent people from being able to provide food and water to voters standing in line for hours and hours, other than preventing them from standing in that line. You're solidly mail-in. Once you move there to where you are and got into it, you don't miss the state. Yeah, no, same here. I love mail-in voting. It's so easy, and I've never had an issue with it. And you can check with the county clerk, and they will tell you if your vote has been accepted or not. You can go online and see it. It's awesome. It's so easy. You love to perform rituals using eyes wide shut ascetics. Oh, nice, Candy Bar. That's great. We vote on the weekend. Everything else is absurd. I agree. That is absurd, and you are lucky. But we do live in an absurd place. No matter how you look at it, America is twisted and absurd. For all of its great opportunities and abilities afforded to the people that are within this wonderful country that I do genuinely love, we're fucked up in a lot of ways. And you got to be honest about it, because if you're going to love the greats, you got to at least acknowledge the bads. And you don't get shot at the polls. Let's do this next one. Yeah, it's not a sexy topic, but you have to understand the realities of it. You have to. Idaho protesters burn masks at state capitol rally. This is from NBC News. About 100 demonstrators burned masks outside Idaho's capital in Boise on Saturday as a statement against pandemic restrictions, according to authorities and to people who tweeted from the scene. No one was arrested, and organizers had permits, but the rally was under review because a fire was started, Idaho State Police said in a statement. Quote, during the event, an open flame was ignited in a barrel, police said. Those involved with the event were informed both before and during the events that open flames are not allowed on state capitol grounds. Video and photos showed children present and even participating. A point person of the rally, conservative activist Dar Moon, the husband of Republican State Representative Dorothy Moon, said it was one of multiple Burn the Mask rallies across the state Saturday, organized by several groups. He posted photos on Facebook of a similar event in Rexburg. Moon said that because the state is mostly rural, it has had low COVID-19 infection numbers, and masks and other pandemic restrictions aren't always needed. Quote, certain health restrictions are mandating on certain towns or mandating wearing masks, and we just don't have the numbers here, he said. The COVID numbers are very low. We've flattened the curve long time ago, and people want to go back to work. They want to have a normal life. According to the Johns Hopkins University Coronavirus Resource Center, about 1 in 4 people who've tested for the virus in the past week in Idaho have turned up positive. That's down from the state's all-time high the week of December the 6th, when 2/3 of those tested were positive. The state has recorded 1,876 pandemic deaths, according to the NBC News tally. A state strongly recommends masks, but they are not mandated, although some cities and counties require them. Both indoor and outdoor gatherings are limited to 50 or fewer. People, tables in bars and restaurants must be at least 6 feet apart, and all patrons have to stay seated. Republican Governor Brad Little tweeted Thursday, keep practicing the things we know work. Wear your mask, wash your hands, stay at home if you're sick. On Tuesday, Idaho's House State Affairs Committee opened the way for the debate on a bill that would prohibit mask mandates by government entities. Idaho's House State Affairs Committee opened the way for debate on a bill that would prohibit mask mandates by government entities. Okay. That is a government entity debating about mask mandates or not having them. Okay. We're not against face masks, Moon said. You know, some people might need to protect themselves. There are certain portions of the populations that are elderly. They have issues. For healthy, bodied people, we want to go back to work. Our livelihoods have been put in jeopardy because all the executive orders and mandates. I'm going to come down on a side that you may not expect. I agree with him. Look, when this pandemic first hit, people got infected fast. It spread fast, and we lost over 500,000 Americans already, and that number is going up still. But at this point, vaccinations are rolling out. Those that are in the worst categories of results are getting vaccinated. I mean, if you want to take the risk, that's on you at this point. You know, Utah has been open for a very long time, and we're not seeing the resurgence numbers that we did last year. I mean, we still have to wear masks indoors and stuff, and that's not a big deal to me. But every once in a while, I'll see someone that just fervently takes the mask off or doesn't even come in the store with a mask, and people just sort of stay away from them. And that's it. It doesn't have to be a huge deal. If you want to take, if you walk down the street, you are taking a risk. Someone could mug you. You could be hit by a car. There are risks you accept every single day. When you get in a car, there are risks that you're going to be hit by another driver, or you're going to lose control or die. Just walking outside, the random occurrence of a meteor, no matter how big, can fall down and kill you. Like, there's just so many factors in life that you have to accept the risks of, and this is just one more. It's no worse than making the choice of not getting a flu shot and then walking around people who have the flu. Just stay away from them. Do what you can to avoid it. Make a conscious decision. We are at the point in this pandemic where I think people who are going to get sick and die, probably it's kind of their fault at this point. I don't think you can accidentally do it. You have to expose yourself one way or another at this point, because you know the consequences. You know how it can be transmitted and how easily it's transmitted. If you get it now, it's kind of on you. So that's just how I feel. I wear a mask every single day, every time I go out, and I will continue to do so until I'm vaccinated. And even then, I'll probably still do it for a while. And we'll still go to work. Schools are already open. Life has resumed. We just have a mask on. For the people who are anti-mask, fine, don't wear a mask. That's your choice. I choose to wear it. That's it. I won't get sick, and you will. I won't face death, and you may. That's a choice. California, I don't even think they have schools open yet, public schools open yet. That's insane at this point. That's crazy. There's no reason, and schools all across the country have proven it that have opened, that you can't have a school open. You just wear masks. You just wash your hands. You just have the janitor come in and spray it down and wipe it down after school. Like, that's it. People are really going crazy still, as if we don't have the science behind it yet. And we do. We know now. Just act accordingly. I don't think there should ever be a restriction on the government from imposing necessary protections for its people. That's the role of government, is to support and protect its populace. And so they have to be able to shut down the country when they have to shut down the country. Like that, it has to be an option. But that also means that leaders have to say, all right, well, maybe we don't need to be so strict about it anymore. In this particular case, Idaho's not, but the local counties are. So maybe local counties should take a cue from their elected leadership. And if the numbers start rising again, well, then keep shutting it back down until they don't rise again. But part of what it is to be an American is to accept some pretty ridiculous risks on yourself. Take responsibility for your own actions. And sometimes you have to, you know? Sometimes it means that someone you love dies. Your kids, your wife, your husband, you. But that's a risk that you took, a decision you made. At this point, I think you should. Die, that is. I don't know if that was clear. No, I'm just kidding. Tell you what, though, you're enjoying the mandate of 6 feet of space. I am too. I really am. I can't stand people. Oh my gosh. Where the numbers on asymptomatic cases? What's the plan for the vaccines not preventing transmission? Why doesn't the government just say that people are going to die and there's nothing to do? Well, if I don't have any of those answers, but I would say, in a logical way, at least for me, in a logical way, when you start seeing the numbers increasing again, after all of these preventative measures are in place, well, then you need to stop and reevaluate. You don't just continue down a bad path, or you just don't continue a path that is not showing any further success, you know? Why is taking a dump in a public bathroom or farting still allowed? I can still smell your crap. All right, maybe that's a little overreaching. I think people need to smell a little shit from time to time. It keeps you grounded. It reminds you, oh yeah, we're still animals. I almost forgot because I had a bunch of likes on my Instagram picture, but now I'm reminded we're animals. I think we need that. All right, let's finish out with the Infernal Informant and finish up with a little bit of old school geeky fun. All right. This is not going to be interesting to many people, so I will not shame you if you bounce out. This is Champions of Kryn. This is an old school, released in 1990, IBM and Apple II DOS-based video game. The clunky graphics, I think it was like 8-bit graphics, maybe 16-bit, which would be fancy. It is the first of a 3-part series of Dragonlance Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Gold Box video games. So for those of you who you clearly must have heard about Dungeons & Dragons, it was all in the Satanic Panic era as one of those games that brings you to the devil. But it's a story-based game, right? You roll dice to see the outcome of the story in particular events. This is that taken to digital form. And so they took the really kind of complex rules of this game and applied it to the computer information. I sound like an old man explaining technology. They applied the technical knowledge into the computer bytes of ones and zeros, and then those decide what happens. So you just play a fucking game, and it's exactly like playing the tabletop game, except with 16-bit graphics. It was developed by and published by Strategic Simulations SSI. It was directed by Victor Penman. The artist was one of the main artists was Tom Wall. The music was composed by John Halblieb. I believe I'm saying that right. It was released for the Amiga, Apple II, Commodore 64, and MS-DOS. It got 5 out of 5 from Dragon Magazine, 6 out of 10 for gameplay, and 8 out of 10 for graphics from Games International. That's right. 8 to 16-bit graphics was 8 out of 10 in 1990. That's all we had. Here's a good thought experiment for those of you who may not have played those games back then or really understood the difference between any of that, but maybe nowadays know something. Watch the movie Hackers. It is amazing. It's talking about technology in terms of like 8-bit. And it's crazy to see juxtapose modern day technology versus the 1990s approach to technology. It is amazing. Amazing. And you're going to see Angelina Jolie as like a super, super young lady. So it's kind of worth it for that. Pretty awesome, dude. Hackers was pretty. I still like it. It's ridiculous, but I like it. It's good stuff. Okay. It sold more than 116,693 copies, which was a lot back then. It was number 10 on the list of the top 11 Dungeons & Dragons games of all time from IGN. And I'm sure there must be a billion of them, so that's pretty high praise. And this is the sort of log line that you get with the game. The War of the Lance is over, but evil is a bad loser. That sounds very 80s, doesn't it? That's like you expect to see that on a bad 80s action film poster. But evil's a bad loser. With the dragon armies defeated and the lands in the east reconquered, the forces of good have withdrawn. And I'm not going to get into it. You guys, if you don't know, this is not going to help you understand it. And if you do know, you already fucking know. I'm from the Nintendo generation. So 16-bit gaming is sort of my bread and butter. IBM PC gaming like this, that's where I cut my teeth with games. That's just where I come from. So role-playing games that take you hours, I don't have time nowadays to do it. But that was my life back then. I loved it so much. And this, again, it's like D&D. So if you ever played D&D as a kid and you have fond memories, and if you think of D&D as nerdy, watch the beginning of E.T. or watch Stranger Things. That if those kids playing it, that's how you feel. It's just a fun game to play with a bunch of friends and sort of escape the mundane world that you live in. And so for young Adam back in the day, this was awesome because I got to be honest, I grate on people's nerves. I am not a very I rub people the wrong way quite often, and I was much worse when I was a kid. So just, for as much as you hate me now, imagine 100-fold as younger me. So this is kind of my escapism. I didn't have a whole bunch of friends that I could go hang out with. I just, a small handful. But a lot of the time it was just sort of me getting lost in fantasy. And if it wasn't this, it was reading novels. I mean, I was a big reader as a kid. Well, still, I guess. But yeah, if you like old school, I guess this makes no sense because I'm reviewing something that no one's ever going to go and play. It is available. So if you want to drop $10, you get all 3 of these games. But it's kind of like, the Pools of Radiance games where it's like first person view for the most part, going through dungeons and turning like that. And then randomly a monster will come up and you'll jump to like a third view or overhead view. And you sort of like hack and slash around people and stuff. Anyway, it sounds a lot stupider now that I'm talking about it, but I have very fond memories of this game. So I want to talk about it just because. So if you want to go back in time, it's available right now. It's ported over to modern computers. You can actually play this or at least cut your teeth on it a little bit to see what it's all about. I highly recommend it if you like fantasy stories and if you like D&D, like old school D&D, check it out. And if you don't, skip it. It's not your cup of tea. Move on. That's all I want to talk about. All right, we are 55 minutes in, and that's what we're going to call this episode. Done and done. Did you guys have fun? Was it all right? No. All right. Dennis kicked the shit out of Pong. Yeah. I hated Pong. I hated Pong so much. I hated Pong when it was against other people. Because if it's against the computer, you're not going to get shit talked. You're not going to be made fun of by the computer. You just sort of sound like, motherfucker. But there's like that Pong where it's like a tennis Pong, like, you know, on each side players. Nothing worse than being shit talked by a friend because you can't play Pong. It's the worst. I mean, it's no different than nowadays. Like, my son is shit talked to 8-year-old kids playing against him in video games right now. So I suppose it's the same thing. But you know what we would do is when we got really pissed from, like making fun of each other and stuff, we'd go get boxing gloves and then just tackle people from behind and just, we're all friends. So it was all, in good fun. But yeah, we got physical back in the day. When you started talking shit, we'd do one thing where you could only have one boxing glove and your other hand had to be tied behind your back. And so we would just try to like one hand box each other and like run around, and whoever got knocked out or whoever got knocked down lost. That's how we would play as kids. It's not far removed from hitting each other with sticks, which we also did. We would take, this is so stupid. My friend's sister had like a Barbie doll house, which had these like plastic poles that held up, I guess it was like the levels or something of the house. We would take those out and we thought it would pad it enough that we would wrap like a shirt around one end of it and like use rubber bands to hold the shirt in place and then just beat the shit out of each other with these sticks. Like, it wasn't like, like, I don't know, the beginning of 2001 Space Odyssey or anything, but it was, we were like sword fighting or whatever, but it ended up just someone got like a chipped tooth or their cheeks cut open because we're just kids having fun. And now the only dangerous thing that ever happens is someone says a mom joke while they're teabagging your avatar on a game. Like, there used to be real consequences to shit talk. We need to go back to that. Weird. All right. Well, anyway. Thanks for tuning into this episode of 9 Cents. I hope you enjoyed it. You can check out all my Satanic series and episodes on my website, ReverendCampbell.com. Of course, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel and like the video. That helps YouTube put the video into circulation for other people who aren't subscribed. And of course, you can sign up to the email list. The link is in the description below if you want to learn anything more about Satanism and the Church of Satan. And why wouldn't you? Check out churchofsatan.com and read and reread the Satanic Bible. It's a good one. I promise. Until next week, everyone. Hail Satan.